Okay, so welcome everybody to today's training on the basics of Newforma Project Center. My name is Lori Beekman. I am your trainer from Newforma. This is the first of two basic training remote sessions that we're going to have. So we will build upon what we learned today in our next training. And I will be showing a short PowerPoint, then I'm going to go right into my training environment. So the names of the people, the names of the projects will be different, but the functionality will be exactly the same as it is when you're sitting at your desk. So don't let the names of the projects throw you. It will be exactly the same. So when we're talking about Newforma Project Center, we really talk about why we use Newforma and what kind of benefit that it gives us for our projects. And in general, Newforma will help you find your project information faster because it acts like a big indexing search engine that's going to go through all of your project files, your drawing files, your PDFs, your emails associated with the project, and allow you to word search those. So similar to a Google search, you'll be able to kind of search your project information that way. It's also going to bring the information about the project into one place so that you can find tasks that you've assigned to people, track the tasks, find files that you've sent to people, see if they actually downloaded the files. So it's really going to increase that transparency and accountability for your projects. And in the end, it's going to integrate your data, whether it's drawing files, PDFs, Excel files, or if it's tasks associated with the project, to kind of bring all of that into one place so that the whole project team is on the same page. So how does it work? The information that you have, your submittals, Revit files, Word documents, emails, specs plans, all of that, we're going to bring that together so that you can see it all and search it all in the same place. Now, the benefit here is that you're not having to double file things. You're not placing them into folders in a new location. You're going to be using those exact same folders that you use now on your network. And what Newforma, if you'll kind of imagine like a blanket that sits on top of that folder structure, when we create a project in Newforma, we actually point to those folders, and that top folder and everything and under it in a folder structure for a project will then get indexed and made searchable in Newforma. So, like I said, you can use the same folders, but Newforma gives you enhanced capabilities with being able to see the files, search them, and search at a very deep level. So we'll kind of talk about that as well. So again, increasing the transparency and accountability, but also, as you can see at the bottom, having the ability for analytics on a project, real-time decision making, because you'll be able to easily see where things stand and who's taking care of which part of a project, but also that project intelligence. So being able to really not just have the information, but really see the moving parts on that particular project and being able to kind of dig into the details without having to go to every person on your project team to gather that information. So the agenda for today is really getting started, how we navigate around Newforma, the power of the Newforma search. So like I said, we'll be digging into the details on that, doing markups in Newforma because we do have a viewer that allows you to do markups. So if you're not using Bluebeam or you want to be able to kind of have it integrated within the project, you have the ability to do markups within Newforma. And then filing and finding your project emails. So getting those emails out of Outlook, having a copy filed to the project, being able to have it indexed with that particular project, and then being able to see it, search it, etc. So let's go ahead into my training environment, and I'm logged in as Howard, and I'm kind of sitting at Howard's desk. So it's very similar to what it would be for your desktop. And to open Newforma, all I have to do is double click on this icon right here, and it goes ahead and opens Newforma Project Center for me. So I don't have to enter any additional username or password. It knows who I am by who I'm logged onto my machine as. So good thing for me, I don't have to remember another password, especially on a Monday, not the best thing. So just navigationally around this My Project Center screen. So this is always kind of the opening screen that you will get when you open Newforma. And at the very top, we see that we have a toolbar, and we won't talk about a lot of these options today. We will, going forward with trainings, we'll kind of come back to this toolbar. if you ever need to get back to this My Project Center screen from anywhere in Newforma, you can always press the little guy right up here with the filing cabinet. He will always bring you back to this main screen. On the left, you'll see I have tasks and common questions. These are dynamic. They change throughout Newforma. So as we go from screen to screen, we will see these update with the available tasks that are, available to me. As I'm logged in as an administrator, so I see a lot of things over here that you might not see. The common questions are like the targeted part of help for the screen that I happen to be on. So again, this is dynamic, so it will update to be relational to the screen that I happen to be on. Now, if the common questions don't help you or you want to learn about a different part of Newforma, you can always come up to the upper right-hand corner where the question mark is, and that will open the general help. From here, you can search the help just like a standard search. We also have a learning tab over on the left, which has things like video tutorials, e-learning modules. And the video tutorials in here are generally between about 4 and 8 minutes. So you can come in and watch these. They're on demand, always available anytime that you would like. No one tracks how many times you watch it. There's no test. So feel free to come in if you wanted to learn about, in this case, action items, which are project to-dos. If I wanted to learn about how to create them, I can watch a 4-minute, 47-second video on how to do that within Newforma. So I can come in really at any time or even search the help. So again, that was that little question mark up here in the upper right-hand corner. Now, the main part of the screen, we have a My Projects tab and an All Projects tab. The All Projects, just like it sounds like, will be all projects that have been set up in Newforma, in my version of Newforma. And to find the project that I'm looking for, I could search through this list. I could scroll, through this list. I could also use any of the column headers to sort or filter or search for projects. And this is the same throughout all of Newforma Project Center. So anytime that you see a grid or table that looks like this, you can always click on any column header to sort by that column. So if I wanted to sort by project name, by number, I could also use the row underneath the column headers to filter. So for example, in type, I could use the little funnel here to filter down to specific types of projects. So if I knew that I was looking for education or healthcare or something, I could filter down to just those and find my project a little bit easier that way. And to clear a search, you can always click on the X in the upper right-hand corner. I could also type into any column header. So for example, if I was looking for a library project, I could just start typing library. And then that way I could find the project that has library anywhere in the name. So just so you know, all of the tables and grids function that same way within Newforma. I can always filter, search, sort by any of the column headers, and I can apply multiple column header filters or sorting. But in my case, I only have 73 projects. It's going to tell me right here. So finding my project isn't really a big deal. I could simply, sort or filter or even just scroll through the list. In my case, though, I'm going to look for my Fowler Square project. And in my case, in my environment, a lot of my projects have a number after the name, as well as sometimes the people have numbers after their names. That will not be the case in your environment. So don't let it throw you. It won't be that way in yours. We just have a lot of people that happen to use the same environment different ways. So we have numbers after the names of different things. So it's fine for me to find my project this way, but I don't want to have to do this searching or sorting or scrolling every single time. So that's where this My Projects comes into play. This is kind of like your personal quick list of projects that you're currently working on. And it doesn't affect anyone else. And I can just add projects to this tab. And then that way, when I open Newforma, it's like they're right here. I don't have to go looking for them or searching for them in any way. They'll just be right here. So to add a project to that tab, all I have to do is find it here on the All Projects first. Then I can just right click and say add to my projects. So I'm just going to do that. And a couple of things happen. Obviously, it's going to add that to the My Projects tab. The second thing it does is it adds a folder in Outlook to help me file my email. So when we talk about filing email here in a few minutes, we'll come back to these, but it will give me a folder here that says Newforma items to file. And then there will be a subfolder underneath the items to file for each of the projects that are on the My Projects tab. So as soon as you add it, it will add that folder here. Now, when you're done working on the project or the project is over completely, you can simply just right click and say remove from My Projects. It will just remove it from the tab. It will remove the folder from Outlook, but that's it. The project is still in Newforma. It doesn't disappear or hide it or change the status or anything like that. So if I were to remove this, maybe I'm done working on it, it just takes it off of the My Projects tab. The folder is no longer in Outlook, but the project is still in Newforma. It is still here. Okay, so we're going to come back to this My Projects tab. I want to pause, take a break, take a breath, see if you guys have questions. If you don't need to unmute. If you do, you can just unmute and ask your question, or you can always type it in the chat. So feel free to do that as well. I will monitor that as we're going along. Okay, doesn't sound like we have any questions, so we will move on. Okay, so we're going to come over here to my Alpen Grove Science Center project, and to access it, all I have to do is double click on it, and it will bring me to the project home. So you'll notice my tasks and common questions on the left have changed. I also have a photo of my project. And today we're really going to focus on the project files, the project email, and a little bit of the markup sessions and the viewer. In our next training, we'll be talking about the project team here and info exchange, which is how we send files to someone using Newforma. So I'm just going to collapse that to make it a little easier to see. And we'll come into our project files. So here we can see I have a lot of folders. I can always expand any of my folders and kind of dig into the details and find a file and see a preview of it. I can even, with it highlighted, open it in AutoCAD if I wanted to, or open it in the Newforma viewer, like I was talking about before, Newforma's viewer. So what's important to understand about these folders that I see here, and remember, this is my environment, not yours, so then the folder structure may look a little different, is the folders that I'm looking at and the files that I'm seeing here are not copies of what's on my network. They are what's on my network. So if I were to delete this file from here and just press delete and say yes here, it would delete it from the network because these are the files and the folders on my network. So if I'm in Windows Explorer and I drag and drop a lot of files into this folder, or I do it here within Newforma, it is truly the same location. We're not copying them. It's not in a different server somewhere. It's not locked in a vault in Newforma. We're simply, like I said before, when we create the project in Newforma, we point to the top folder here on the network to let Newforma know for this project, this folder and everything under it belongs to this project and should be indexed with this project. In my case, I'm actually pointing to two different top folders on my network because I happen to have information related to this project in two different places on my network, but all of the subfolders come through automatically. And since we're just simply pointing to these files and they are truly the same files on my network, I can right click on a folder, come to my Explorer tasks, and depending on what my permission is on my network, I will have the ability to copy, move, delete, rename, create a new folder, open it in Windows Explorer, copy the path to the clipboard if I needed to send it to someone else to say, hey, everything you're looking for is here. So I have those same functions, but it truly goes by whatever my permission is on my network. If it was read only and I couldn't modify any of the, I couldn't add subfolders or things like that on my network, when I come into Newforma, the create new folder will not be available. If I'm not able to delete or rename, those won't be available. So it truly is whatever your permission is on your network. We're not going to give you additional permissions, but we also don't restrict you any from what you have available on your current network for that particular folder structure. Same if folders are hidden from you on your network, even if the project is created in Newforma, you still will not be able to see or search those files in Newforma Project Center because they're hidden from you on your network. Now, when I'm talking about indexing files, your firm has a server or a process that does the indexing for Newforma, and it indexes everything to make it searchable. And a lot of people will say, well, Lori, I can search in Windows Explorer. Why would I search in Newforma? And there's a big difference for a couple of reasons. But first off, it's indexing on a constant basis, right? So when I do a search, I'm just hitting the index data. So the search results will come back faster because it's not actually performing the search at that minute. The other reason is really because when we're indexing data in Newforma, we index at a very deep level. We're not only indexing for searching the name of the file, the body of the file, the body of an email, the body of a Word document, but we also use optical character recognition to index things like words, numbers, and phrases on PDFs and DWGs so that when you're searching at a very deep level and you're searching much faster. Now, that's not to say you still couldn't search in Windows Explorer. It's just you might get additional results if you're searching in Newforma, but it's not going to prevent you from searching in Windows Explorer. So don't feel like that's a closed door that you can't do that. By all means, you still can. You just might find better results if you're using Newforma. So I've got all these files that's being searched and really indexed really from anywhere within the project I can perform the search. Now, if I'm already in the project files, I could just come up to this top part that says search project contents. But if I go back to my project home, I can just click the little home button right up here. And I can still do the search project contents from here in the upper right-hand corner. Or if I was in a different activity center, I could do that as well. And if I'm in that project files, again, a lot of people will be tempted to come here where it says filter all columns. If you enter something in there for a search, you're simply just looking at what is in the columns in this table right here to find that data, which you'll notice it doesn't have the name of the file, the body of the file. This is just the folders and the type of folder and the date, right? It's just got the owner. It doesn't really have any of that information. Even if I was looking within a folder, say I was looking in my architectural folder, even if I do the filter all columns here, I'm still not searching within the body. I'm not searching emails or anything. I'm just searching the contents of that folder just for the name of the file, the owner, the date modified. So the search project contents up at the top is really searching the entire project. So if I come back to my project home, I'm going to come into the search project contents, and today I'm going to look for the word skylight. So I'm just going to type skylight in the upper right-hand corner. And if I were to press enter, it would search the entire project folder structures that we saw within the project files for all that index data for the word skylight. So body of file, name of an email, name of a file, attachments. It looks with optical character recognition to PDFs, DWGs, those kinds of things within those files to look for the word skylight. And it comes back very quickly. We'll do that in just a second. But you'll notice there's a drop down here next to the magnifying glass. If I click that, you'll see that if I knew that it was an email that I was looking for, I could just say search the project email for this project, so that way I'm already kind of weeding out the Revit, the Word documents, anything that's not an email or email attachment. So I could already kind of filter down to just those. I could also choose to search all of the projects on the My Projects tab at one time. So if you had maybe 5 projects that were one client or something, and you're like, well, I'm not quite sure which one contains the document I'm looking for, but all of them are on your My Projects, you could just say search all of the My Projects at one time instead of having to search them individually. You can also choose selected projects. So this way I can choose multiple projects, even if they are not on the My Projects. A real life example of this, I have a client in New York that they do high-rise residence halls for universities, and each floor of a residence hall is a different project. So when they're looking for something for a building, it might be on one project, it might be on multiple. They may not know where it belongs or where it is. So this way they could choose all of the projects that relate to all of the floors within that residence hall and search them at one time instead of searching them individually. So saving time and effort. The other option here is the archived and offline projects. So if a project has been created in Newforma and let's say that it's over, maybe you have a warranty period or something and it's over, and you're not doing any more activity on that particular project. Well, in Newforma, you'll make it archived or you could make it offline. And at that point, you can't add anything new. So you wouldn't be able to file more emails or do another action item or file transfer. But you could still see the project in Newforma, search it, even run reports on that particular project in Newforma Project Center. Even 5 years later, you could still go back and look at what you sent to someone, what was said in a conversation, even if everyone who worked on that project is no longer with your firm. As long as they file the email to the project, you would still be able to see it, search it, etc. So you do have the archived and offline projects. In my case, though, I'm just going to search this one project. So I'm just going to press enter. And it's going to do the search very quickly. I had a status bar down here at the bottom. It goes very quickly because it's already done. But here you can see in the middle, it's going to tell me that it found 238 results. So from here, I have that same table that I had before. I have that same functionality. So I could sort by name, by date modified if I was looking for something more recent. I could even filter by type of file. So again, if I knew that it was an email, I could just filter down to just emails. So I go from 238 down to 7. Again, these are filed project emails. So we'll talk about how those emails get there in just a minute. So from here, if I highlight an email, it's going to show me down here at the bottom where the word skylight was found. Notice it's highlighting the PDF attachment that is not named skylight. So that's where that nice deep level of searching comes into play with Newforma. Now from here, if this is just a file transfer notification, but if it was a regular email and I needed to respond to it, I can double click on it. It opens it in Outlook and I could say reply, reply all, or forward, even if I was never on the email to begin with. As long as it has been filed to the project, I can still see it. I can still reply to it, etc., without having to copy and paste it into Outlook or forward it to myself first. I can open it and just say reply, reply all, or forward. Once it gets sent from there, it would be in my sent items in Outlook. Okay, so let's say that it wasn't an email. Let's say that it was a drawing file. So I'm just going to choose my drop down and choose a drawing file, DWG, DGN, DXF. And I have 105, still a lot, still quite a few. And if I click on any one of these, it's going to give me a thumbnail of what that looks like down at the bottom, but still too small. So over on the left, you'll notice under my tasks, I can open this with AutoCAD, but if I do not have AutoCAD installed and maybe I don't have a license for it, etc., I can open this with the Newforma viewer. So what opens in the viewer? Anything that is 2D image. So DWG, DGN, DXF, JPEG, PDF, PNG, all of those types of things will have the ability to open in the Newforma viewer. So Revit models, no. Word documents, no. Excel, no. Email, no. But if it's one of those drawing files or image files that's 2D, it will give me the option of also opening it in the Newforma viewer, which is great because not everybody has a license for AutoCAD. Maybe they just want to look at something very quickly. Now with this, because I'm opening this from a search, it's going to show me how many times the word skylight was found in this particular drawing. And if I click on any one of these, it will zoom into that part of the file. And I can just use the roller ball on my mouse to kind of zoom out. And I can use the tools up here at the top to move this over if I want to get a better idea. But if that wasn't the skylight that I was looking for, I can just come right back up here to my binoculars, get my Drawing Explorer window back, and choose a different skylight. So I have the ability here to kind of see what skylight. Now remember, because I can open PDFs in here, I could open, and I did this at a client not that long ago, I opened a 400-page PDF and I was able to find a phrase that was within, the document, and it could have, I think it was on like page 200 and something. So it was able to just go in and zoom right into that part of the document very quickly and easily. I don't have to flip through all these pages. So it does give you a nice ability to do that. Now from here, if I wanted to do a markup session, markups in Newforma do not change the source file. They're simply a layer that I can overlay at any time or not, but the original file will stay exactly the same. In this case, I'm just going to click on my markup tool in the upper left, and I'm going to choose a cloud with my pointer, and I'm going to draw it in pink. But if I didn't want any of these colors, I can just double click on my pen and I can change all of my pen properties. These will stay a sticky setting for me. So if you color code your markups depending on discipline, you could set your pens once and that's it. Every time you come into the viewer, you would not need to reset them. They would just stay that color or with those properties. So let's go back into here. Let's cancel out of there. I'm still going to use that pink one though. I'm just going to draw around here to draw my cloud. And I could have used, instead of using the pen, I could have just had it draw a revision cloud. And then I could use a leader with a call out and just say, replace the standard window, who knows? But I could change the font size, the font color, etc. No problem. And I can still, let me go over here. I can right click on this and add a shape around it if I want to. And I know we're going through this quick. We record these so you can always come back and look at it, but just to show you some of the capabilities here. Okay, so I've done my markup. And if I want to save my markup, remember to create the layer that I can overlay at any time, I can just click on the disk up here in the upper left, and I can name my markup session whatever I choose, because remember, it's just a layer. It does not change the original file. It will also associate my name. I'm logged in as Howard71. It will associate my name to the markup session. So when people look at the markup session, they know who did it, when they did it, and what they named it. So here we can just say, okay. And I can close my viewer. Now to show you, I'm just going to refresh my screen here. And here in the related items, there is a little icon that shows that there is a markup session related to this file. There's quite a few of them actually, but if I look down here at the bottom, I can see that there's actually 4 markup sessions. I can see who did them and when. Here's the one we just did. My database is very old. That's why you see things from 2016. But if I open this back up in the viewer, because these are all layers that sit on top, I can overlay everyone's markups and create one flattened PDF that I can then email out. Again, original source file will stay exactly the same. So in this case, instead of coming to the Find tab here in my Drawing Explorer, I'm going to come to my Markup Sessions tab. Here are all of the markups. Here's when they were done. And I can overlay them. They're probably all in the same place, up a couple places. And I say, oh, close here, just to zoom in to show you. And I'm going to make this monochrome. So I'm going to turn on the monochrome just to make that a little easier to see. So we can see here, we have 2 markup sessions up here, and I have 2 markup sessions down here. But to overlay all of this and create a flattened PDF, I just click on my PDF button right up here. And in this case, I'm going to say send PDF because I'm going to send it through email and show you how I file the email to the project at the same time. So send PDF. Because this is a brand new PDF that I'm creating with the overlays on top of it, I can name the PDF whatever I want. And I'm going to send it as an email attachment. We're not going to worry about these quite yet. That'll be more when we're talking transmittals with our file transfers. And it creates the email. It attaches the PDF named the way that I wanted it to be named. And it has some information related to the project number, the source file, the date, all that good stuff. And let me make that a little smaller. So I'm going to email this to Bob. He's an external person, and Carolyn and Chet. And when I'm emailing this email or any other email from Outlook, once I have Newforma installed, I will have an Outlook add-in, which will also add this send and file in project button to my emails. So that if this is an email that I want to file a copy of the email to the project so that it's searchable, then instead of just saying send, I'm going to say send and file in project. So I say send and file. I choose which project I want to file the email to. It's going to show the My Projects, Recent Projects. If it's not one of those, I can click on the ellipsis. I can file it to any project in Newforma. And at the same time, if I want that attachment to be filed to a specific folder on my network, I could say save copy of attachment separately. I'm not going to worry about that for now. We'll come back to it in just a minute. But I'm just going to say send and file. So what happens when I do this is that in my sent items in Outlook, I'll then have this email with the attachments in my sent items in Outlook. But at the same time that Newforma sends it through Outlook, it creates an exact duplicate of this email, including the attachment, and it will place it in a folder on the network for filed project email. And depending on how your project is set up, will determine where in your folder structure it goes. But it is not locked in a vault in Newforma. It is truly in your folder structure on your network. So in this case, I'm going to say send and file. I'm going to close the viewer. And just to show you in my case where these go, in my project files, I have a communications folder. You might have a Newforma folder. Mine goes under an email folder, and then it's separated by year and month. And it puts it in that folder by year and month. So here's the email that we just sent, September 10th. With the attachment, and because it is part of this folder structure, it gets indexed and is searchable in Newforma. And we even have a project email activity center to see just the filed project emails. Now we're going to go through this process again, just not from the viewer. So like I said, in my case, it's under a communication email folder. In your case, it might be under a Newforma folder with an email subfolder. But at the end of the day, it's on your network. So if I were to right click on this and say, Explore Tasks, Select in File System, I'm here in Windows Explorer. It's still under my folder, my project, communication, email, month day, or month year. So I have that same folder structure, and I could search it within Windows Explorer if I wanted to. So if we come back here to our project home, just to circle back on a couple things with the markups. So the markup sessions themselves are stored on your Newforma server. They are related items to the original file. So whatever file you're marking up, it's a related item to that file. And when we saw it in the folder structure, we saw it as a related item with a little icon. But really at any time, you could just come to the markup sessions activity center, and you would be able to see all markup sessions that have been performed, who did them, when, what file did they mark up. I can see a preview of it down here at the bottom. And the related item in this case is the original file that was marked up. And from here, I could open the markup session in the viewer. I could open the original file in the viewer. no problem. And because I have that same table that I had before, I can always sort it by source so that I could see all of the markups that were done on that same file if I just wanted to scroll through them and take a look at them very quickly. Of course, I could always open the file in the viewer and see all of the markups with all of them overlaid. But if I just want to scroll through super quick and see who marked up what, by all means, I can do that. Another thing that you can do within any table is I can drag and drop columns in whatever order I want. So if I wanted to put the source column here next to the name of the file or the name of the markup, I could just drag it and drop it over and it will put that source file right here. This only affects you and does not change until you choose to change it. So if I log out and open a Newforma the next day, the columns are still going to be in that same order. Okay, so if we come back here to our project home, again, Newforma viewer, markup sessions, project files, no problem. Our project email is where all of the filed project email are shown. Now, before we dig into this a little deeper, I want to pause, take a break, take a breath, see if we have any questions on the searching, the markups, the creating of the flattened PDF.
Hi, Lori. I think we are good, but I do have one question. We're talking about navigation, searching, marking up. I'm assuming you will walk us through how to create a new document and how and where to save it. How does it link with the Newforma?
So as soon as you place a file on your network in the folder structure here that's referenced, it automatically will be able to be seen in Newforma and it will get indexed. So you use the same folders that you use now on your network. When we go through our administrator training, we'll talk about how we set up the settings and we actually point to that folder structure. But however you're setting up your folders now on your network, you'll continue to kind of do that same thing. It's just when we create the project in Newforma, we actually point to the folders. But saving files, naming them, creating new subfolders, it's all the same as what you're used to now.
Okay, as long as they are synced, they're saved.
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's not really a syncing. We just actually just point to the folders, and then when it gets to that project in the indexing process, it will just index those new files or changes to files that you may have made.
So during the life of the project, if we keep creating new subfolders, since it's linked at the beginning, Newforma will read those new subfolders. Is that correct?
Yep. As long as you don't change the name of the top folder, because then it would be pointing to a folder that's now in a different location. But all of the subfolders, you could add new subfolders, modify existing subfolders, add files, remove files, modify them. As long as it's still underneath this base, higher level folder, it will continue to get indexed and made searchable in Newforma.
Very good. Thank you. That
clears it. You're welcome. Yeah, no problem.
What about the new revisions of the drawings of the documents that we are creating? So do we only see the latest one or we see all the revisions?
So it depends on whether you're going to be using document control to manage those or whether you're still storing all of your old sheets. We have a way that we can better organize it through document control. We're not going to talk about that today because it's very detailed, but by all means, if you're doing revisions and you're keeping like older revisions in by folder or something like that, by all means. If we're looking at it in document control, we would be able to easily scroll between the first revision to the latest revision without any problem. And as long as they're in that folder structure, you can always search them even if you're not using document control. Document control just makes it a little bit easier.
What about viewing XREFs in a drawing in Newforma? So right now, if you view DWG, you can see the drawing in there itself, but that looks like the drawing is actually in there. How does it view a drawing with an XREF attached or a 3D model?
It doesn't view XREFs or 3D models. It's only 2D image. So DWG, DGN, DXF, JPEG, PDF, PNG, those types of files. 3D and XREFs are separate.
We have one more question, Laurie.
Sure.
Darren?
Yeah, Lori, just a quick question around your filing. So you talked about how we have the ability to archive projects. What we do at J&E is we actually physically move the files from one folder to another. So are we able to do that within Newforma and keep all of the linkage?
Yes, so you'll actually repath the project folders to whatever that new location is so that you can still keep everything indexed so that it would still be searchable, but it would be kind of read only if you make an archive. But by all means, yes, you would just repath it to that new location if you move all those files.
And we can limit who is able to do that repathing, is that correct?
Correct. They would have to be a project or a global administrator to be able to access those settings.
Okay, and one other question as it relates to the markups. So we can apply markups, which I'm watching people in this room and they're salivating at it. The markups themselves, are they viewable outside of the Newforma viewer if we do not PDF them?
No.
So I go into a drawing through Newforma, I apply a markup.
Right. Because the markup session isn't stored in your folders, it's actually stored on the Newforma server. So you would be able to see it in the viewer through the desktop, but you would also be able to see it through the Info Exchange website through the Newforma web viewer. But if I was just using the folder structure, it's actually not stored there. It's actually stored on your Newforma server. So no, you wouldn't be able to see it if you were just looking like in Windows Explorer, you wouldn't be able to see it.
Okay.
Unless you flatten it into PDF.
We're sending that to somebody, we either have to give them access to the viewer or PDF it with the markups embedded. Is that correct?
Correct. So if you share it with them through an Info Exchange transfer and it has the markup, they would be able to see it in the Newforma web viewer through any web browser, and you would control who can see what.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that a lot more during our next training too. Okay, we good for now?
We are good.
Okay.
We are good for now.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
Mute again.
okay. So now we're going to come back to our email because we're going to circle back to this items to file folder and our emails that are in Outlook. Now, just so you guys know, you can file from any folder in Outlook. It does not need to be your inbox. It could be your sent folder, your deleted items, a subfolder you created. It could really be from any folder in Newforma, or sorry, from in Outlook. And when I'm filing emails, I can either file them one at a time or I can file them in groups. Now, before you open Newforma the first time, if you've already opened it, you probably already know this, but if you haven't opened Newforma yet and you go back to your desk and you're like, I want to open Newforma, I want to get started. What I want you to do first is close Outlook, then open Newforma, let it load fully, then open Outlook. And the reason being is that's how it loads the Outlook add-in up here at the top. Now you only need to do that once. Once you have the Outlook add-in loaded, from that point going forward, you don't even have to have Newforma open. You will still have the Outlook add-in there. It will still be active. Or you can open Newforma first and then Outlook. It doesn't really matter what order you open anything, or even if you have Newforma open. Just the very first time, you'll want to close Outlook first, open Newforma, then open Outlook so that the Outlook add-in loads properly. Now, we're going to talk about a little bit of this Outlook add-in today. We'll talk more about it during our next training when we talk about sending and requesting file transfers. And a little bit down the road with contract management as well. But for now, I'm just going to deal with emails that are in my inbox, but just know they could be anywhere in Outlook. And I have to think about what I want to have. Leslie, I'll come back to your question. I have to think about what I want to have happen to the email when I file it. So, for example, if it's an email that I've already responded to, it's more historical and I'm keeping it in a folder in my Outlook, quote unquote, just in case one day I need it, but I've already taken care of it 6 months ago. Or it was an FYI kind of email. Maybe I was CC'd on something and I'm like, well, I don't need to respond to it, but normally I would just place it in a folder just in case one day I need it, but I know I'm probably not. If it's one of those types of emails, then I can use the items to file folders over here under, for my Alpengrove underneath that items to file, because this folder comes from, remember, are my projects. And what's key here is that these folders do not act like a regular Outlook folder. They act more like a processing queue. So for example, let's say that I had some emails down here somewhere, I think. I have some emails that are related to this project, right? I can highlight whatever I want. And I've already replied to them. And normally I would just keep them in a folder one day just in case I need them, but I probably don't. I'm going to take them, drag them, and drop them over under the items to file to the subfolder for that project. And what happens is you have a server, you have a process server that comes through, and it only looks under the items to file. It goes from person to person. And when it gets to me, if I had multiple folders here, it would go through each folder individually. And if there's anything in a subfolder for a project, Newforma picks up the email, copies it, takes the copy, places it on the network in the folder for filed project email, like we just saw, indexes it, then takes the original email that I have here right now. It will stamp it in the categories here as filed by Newforma, and it will place it in my deleted items folder. Okay, so it's not going to come back to where it was, but it's not going to delete it out of Outlook completely. So that's why I say you really only use that first way of filing emails if it's something that you don't need to do anything with it. It was an FYI, you already replied to it, and you really don't need it in Outlook, but prior to Newforma, you kept everything just in case one day I need it. I know how that goes, trust me. But it'll sit here until it files that email. Okay, so how long does that take? Well, it depends on a couple of factors. How many people are at your firm, how many people are filing email, where it is in the processing queue, and how many emails people are actually filing. Because it does look through each subfolder individually. If somebody has like 50 projects on their My Projects, it goes through each folder and it pauses like 2 seconds in between each one. So even if I wasn't filing anything in those 50 projects, it will still take, a minute or so to go through it all, because it's got to look at each one and then pause, look at it again, pause, look at another one, pause. So a few seconds to a few minutes, but once it picks it up, there won't be anything in this folder. I always like to think of it as, I'm waiting at the doctor. I check in, I sit there when they come and get me. I'm not in the waiting room anymore. So that's if I don't need the email to stay where it is. But what if I do? If I have it in a to-do folder or an inbox or what have you, and I want the email to stay there, then what I do is I take the email or a group of emails. Let's say I have a couple of emails in here, and I'm going to click on the File in Project button up at the top from the Outlook add-in. And what it's going to do is it's going to give me that same, hold on, I've got some other things in here. It's going to give me that same pop-up window that I had before. You guys won't get those other two pop-ups. My database is kind of wonky a little bit. But it will give me that same pop-up that I saw when I did the Send and File in Project from the Newforma viewer, in that I can choose from the My Projects, Recent Projects, or really, if I click the ellipsis, any project in Newforma, and I can just say File. Now, if I use the Outlook add-in and I say File, it's going to take the email or a group of emails. It's going to stamp them in the categories as filed by Newforma, and at the same time, it makes an exact duplicate, including any attachments, and it files it to the project in the folder on the network, files, indexes it, okay? But the email itself, the original, stays right here. The good part about this is if I'm like, oh, I don't need this email anymore, I can just delete it from Outlook because a copy of it has already been filed to the project. So at this point, it really does exist in two places. But if I delete it completely out of Outlook, it's okay because it's already been filed to the project in Newforma. And I'll show you how to get it back into Outlook in just a minute. The question always comes, well, Lori, what if an email was sent to 10 of us and 10 of us file it? What happens? The first email will get filed to the project. Any subsequent filing of the exact same email, Newforma will recognize as a duplicate and it will not file it. So when you do a search, you won't see 10 instances of the same email. You'll only see it once. And for any person that goes by and tries to file an email that's already been filed, first off, it's not going to tell you in advance if it's already been filed. And when you go to file it, it will still stamp it as filed by Newforma because it's still filed to the project, but it's not going to tell you it was a duplicate. So to you, you'll know, oh, it's already filed, but it's not going to tell you, oh, you filed a duplicate email. And it's not going to tell you in advance if somebody else already filed it. So a good rule of thumb is if it's project related, file it. Okay, because I can file it in mass, right? I can choose multiples and file them all at the same time, which is really helpful if you have created those subfolders in Outlook for those just in case, emails. I could go back and highlight groups of them at a time and file them kind of in bulk to a project. And then if I'm like, oh, I don't need anything that's older than 6 months, I could just highlight all those. If they're stamped in the categories as filed by Newforma, I could just delete them because a copy of them is already filed to the project. And like I said, even if I use the items to file, it's just going to place those emails in the deleted items and they will still be stamped as filed by Newforma. So I could always highlight them here and delete them out of my deleted. Outlook is still Outlook. So unless you have protocol set up to automatically delete from the deleted, they will still be here until you choose to delete them. But this way, it's a nice way of knowing, what's been filed. Now, like I said, if you had, let's say I have an email in here that, let me find a good one. Let's say I have an email that has an attachment. And remember, when we file the email to the project, it files the email and the attachment in that same folder. But what if it's something that I want to save the attachment somewhere else on the network, like it's a drawing or it's meeting minutes or something, and I don't want it to be in the email folder. I want it to be in a specific folder on the network. When I file that email, I'm going to say save copy of attachment separately. And when I say file, it's still going to file the email with the attachment to that project in the folder, but it gives me a pop-up to let me choose where I want to file the attachment. So let's say here I want to file this in my product data, who knows, general. I can also rename the file at this point and just say save. So that way the email with the attachment is saved in the email folder and the attachment has a copy's been made and then saved in the folder that I chose. So that way, if you do want to save those separately, you can. If I find one that has, like this one has several attachments, if you do this save copy, you don't have to file them all in the same place. You could say this one, I want to save, at such and such location, and then these two, I want to save in a different location. By all means, you can choose to save those in different locations. So like I said, that way you can just kind of do it as part of the email filing process. With responding to an email or forwarding it, you do have the send and file in project, just like we saw when we created that flattened PDF and we sent it. So you do have that available to you. And once I file an email, let's say that I filed an email, it's now in my project email activities center. Even if I wasn't the person who filed the email, I can search all of these emails. And if I find an email that I need to get into my Outlook, maybe I deleted it, but it needs to remind me of something or what have you, I can take an email or a group of emails and I can say copy to my mailbox. And Newforma will make a copy of what's already been filed. It will place it in Outlook in a separate folder called Newforma copied messages. So it doesn't just put it in your inbox, it actually segregates it out into a separate folder of its own. I'm the only one who can place emails there, and they only come from Newforma. And then from here, I can drag and drop them anywhere in Outlook. So if you're like me, sometimes I have too many emails in my inbox, at least it doesn't just dump them right there. It separates them out into this other folder so that I know, oh, these are the ones I brought from Newforma. And you'll notice they're already stamped as filed by Newforma. So if I delete them, it's no big deal because they are merely copies of what I've already filed to the project in Newforma, and those filed emails are still there. Now, a couple things I want to show you from the project email. Sometimes mine looks a little junky to people. If you want to change what it looks like, you can simply click on the little button right up here. And I could turn off the preview, and I could even turn off the auto preview as well if I want to do that, or if I wanted to put the preview on the right to make it look a little bit more like Outlook. Sometimes people have their Outlook set up this way. By all means, you can change what it looks like. It stays sticky for you, so it won't change until you decide to change it. Some people just like the auto preview with none of the other preview on, like this. So they just have that little bit of the email shown. And some people like it like this. They like it on the bottom, they like it on the right. Just know you can change this to have it say whatever you want. Also, if you're looking for a thread of an email, you can just highlight any email and just say view conversation, and you would be able, and mine's always a little messed up, so you'll have to excuse me if I can't find one right away. But if I say view conversation, I could see all of the emails that have been filed as part of that same email thread. Now, the other thing that always comes up is if I file an email and there's a lot of back and forth conversation, do all of those subsequent emails get filed? No. So you choose what you file to a project. And it usually goes without saying, but please do not file anything that you would not want anybody internally to be able to read, because remember, all of you can see all of this. You can search all of it. So if you're talking bad about someone, please don't file it. It probably shouldn't be in an email anyway, but you would be surprised at what I see. So just be cognizant of that. It won't auto-file it. There is a way to auto-file, but that's more of an advanced function with your administration. You would also have to set up a project email address for every project that you want to have that ability, and include it in the to or the CC on those emails, and then it would auto-file it. But it is a little bit more setup. It's a little bit more when you're actually creating those emails to have those, to make sure you have all the email addresses in there to file things. So out of the box, no, it does not auto-file anything. So you would have to choose what you want to file. And of course, if you send an email out to everybody and say, hey, can everybody meet today at 3 o'clock to talk about such and such? You probably don't need to file that email. But if you're starting to get people saying, well, it's not important that we talk about this, it's not it's not a high priority or something, you might want to go back and file those emails. And since you can file from any folder in Outlook, you could file from your sent, you could file from your deleted, you could file from your inbox, you can really file from anywhere. And if you guys noticed, my Alpen Grove Science Center is now empty because it came through and it filed the emails. So a few seconds to a few minutes and then they're gone. Okay, so we're right at the top of the hour, but we did start a couple minutes late, so I want to pause and see if we've got any questions. Leslie, your question about, is there an add-in for Office 365 and do you see the Newforma folders? So the Outlook add-in is only for Outlook like this. It's not for Office 365, but you will see the folders in Office 365, just like you will on your phone. So while, if you're accessing like webmail or you're accessing, your email on your phone, you don't have like a ribbon on the top like that. You won't have the Outlook add-in, but you will still see the Newforma folders, the Newforma items to file and all the subfolders, and you could drag and drop into those folders from your phone or from like a webmail. You could do that as well. So I hope that helps, Leslie. Other questions? I know it's a lot in the brain on a Monday.
No, we are good, Lori.
Okay, so I will end the recording for now. If